Hello, everyone, and welcome to episode 407 of the True Crime All the Time Unsolved podcast. I'm Mike Ferguson, and with me, as always, is my partner in true crime, Mike Gibson. Gibby, how are you?
Hey, I'm doing okay. How about you?
I'm doing great.
Yeah?
You and I just finished up recording our TCAT episode, and it was kind of a different one.
It was.
You know, it's on this guy named Richard Glossop, who has spent, decades on death row in Oklahoma for a murder. But there are a lot of people who believe he's innocent. He's claimed as innocent.
Sure.
And I'm not just talking about people online.
No.
I mean, these are like the attorney general, lawmakers in the state are not convinced that he should be put to death.
It's a good listen. Go out and listen to it and see where you sit on it.
Yeah, absolutely. Let's go ahead and do our Patreon shout outs. We had Billy Hammett.
Hey, Hammett.
Holly Levitt.
What's up, Levitt?
Holly.
It's a Holly.
Jermaine Robertson.
What's going on, Robertson?
Lissy Johnson.
Hey, Johnson.
Stephanie Keel.
Oh, awesome, Keel.
Nino Reyes.
What's up, Reyes?
Ben Kirk.
Hey, Captain Kirk.
Jamie Miller.
Hey, Miller.
Bridget Hester.
Hester in the house.
Samantha Wamsley.
There's the Wamsley.
And last but not least, Allison Hemlin.
Hemlin.
So we appreciate all the new support. And then if we go back into the vault, this week we selected Simon Brunt.
The brunt of it.
And, his first name, Simon, elicited kind of a long discussion on Patreon.
You had to go down a rabbit hole.
And went down it incorrectly.
Absolutely you did.
Badly. It was not good. But if anybody wants to hear me be about as wrong as I can be, it's on Patreon.
It really is.
Right now.
Unless between now and the time it goes out.
I edited it out.
You edited it out.
No, I'm not. I'll leave it in there. I don't have a problem with being wrong. I was definitely wrong. All right, buddy. You ready to get into this episode of True Crime All the Time Unsolved?
I am ready.
We're talking about the mysterious death of Joseph Smedley. Joseph Smedley was a 20-year-old student at Indiana University who died under mysterious circumstances. His death was officially declared a suicide, but his family has questioned this ruling. And we have done at least a few cases that kind of run along this same line.
We have.
Right? Someone dies. The authorities believe it is a suicide. They rule it that way. And the family says, no, we just don't believe that's what happened.
Yeah.
Joseph Smedley grew up in Indianapolis, Indiana. His family described him as upbeat and a jokester. They recalled how he liked playing pranks on them and practicing wrestling moves on his sister.
Fellow wrestler.
I know you and your brothers like to wrestle. I don't know why you put on the singlets while you were just wrestling around in the house, but
it allowed you to make the best move possible.
It grabbed someone by their trunks and...
Yeah, it also protected certain things.
It protects nothing and it hides nothing. That's what I don't like about the singlet.
Yeah, definitely doesn't hide anything. It's like,
we see what you've got. Joseph's father, Joseph Smedley Sr., wrote in a statement published by WTHR, Joseph has always been multi-talented. He attended preschool and kindergarten at the Orchard School in Indianapolis. He's always been a good and responsible student. When he got his first pair of glasses, we referred to him as the little professor.
How about that? I was never referred to as a little professor when I got my first pair of glasses.
Joseph attended the Oaks Academy, where he excelled in math and reading. His hobby then was martial arts, probably because he enjoyed the Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles. At 9 years old, he was presented with a yellow belt and certificate from Gospel Martial Arts Union, Junior Kai program, where he received simultaneous training in mental, physical, and spiritual discipline. He received training under Executive Director, Master Instructor, Kyoshi Johnny R. Russell Jr., who was a 7th degree black belt. Joseph also played on the soccer team for the old Northside neighborhood in Indianapolis. He attended Craig Middle School, where he became interested in band. Joseph chose to play the trombone.
And I remember when I got my 7th degree belt, it was not easy, but so interesting.
Yeah, he's pretty well-rounded, though. I mean, I wonder how many kids got into martial arts because of the Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles.
Probably a lot.
They were big.
Them and the Power Rangers.
And the Power Rangers.
I know you're pretty good with a trombone.
I played the trumpet, sir, when I was a little kid.
Oh.
And then I was focused on sports, so I wasn't in the band in high school, but I was in the band when I was younger. But I think I've told this story before. My youngest daughter is a black belt in Taekwondo, and she went through that for years and years, and I think it was very valuable to her.
A lot of discipline, things that you learn. Yeah. That's how, like I said, again, I broke past the 7th degree.
Uh-huh.
You know, now
passed it to the 8th.
I did. Now it was not your typical training.
Well, it was online, so it was.
Yeah, I was my own sensei.
It was probably hard because it was a mail order Taekwondo class.
Yeah, I had to, take lessons from myself.
Yeah, but it was also about this time that he took an interest in cooking. He was soon asking for cookbooks and began cooking special recipes for the family. He so impressed a friend of his father's that the friend purchased a chef's jacket and hat. Chef Joseph was inscribed on the jacket. So, this kid was very well rounded.
Sounds like.
You just can't say anything other than that. Joseph went to Lawrence Central High School, where he continued in band. He soon specialized in the jazz band and participated in numerous concerts, including solos. The jazz band recorded at least one CD. In addition to band, Joseph became a wrestler. He began wrestling varsity during his sophomore year. He was also an excellent swimmer. Like most teens, Joseph liked game systems and technology. And it was pretty soon that his technical knowledge exceeded that of his dad. Dad swallowed his ego and sought Joseph's advice when he encountered a technical problem with his phone or computer. So as so often happens, Gibbs, as we're telling, these stories, I find similarities between people we talk about and you.
It happens.
You also love to cook. You don't like to buy or pay for meals, but you like to cook.
Yeah.
You did wrestle.
I did.
You're also an excellent swimmer.
Oh, just give me a pair of goggles and set me free. Now, I prefer those things on my arms.
The floaties?
Yeah.
Helps out. But the other thing I will say, I think it's pretty common, right? For kids at some point to surpass their parents when it comes to like technology.
Oh, yeah.
Not every kid, but a lot of kids. I know my dad's always calling me for advice about his phone, his computer. Now, he's in his 70s, but,
yes.
I
just remember my mom and my dad, when they both were alive, they thought I was just a genius.
Yeah.
Because I could figure out how to do certain things on their computer or I found a way to get the remote on the TV to work again. I'm like, yes, I am a genius.
There's a low bar. They had a low bar when it came to what astonished them about you.
Oh, yes.
His dad said Joseph was simultaneously both a great little brother to his older sister and older brother and great big brother to his younger sister, who looks up to him and adores him. We will always love and miss him.
Sounds like a great kid.
Yeah, I think he was a great kid. And it's very clear from the statement that Joseph's family loved him. But he did experience some challenging times with his family as a child and teenager. His parents divorced when he was in the 3rd grade, which was difficult for him. I think it's difficult for most kids.
Sure.
His mother moved to St. Thomas. Joseph lived with her for a while, but their relationship soured, according to his sister Vivian, and he decided to move back home. Vivian said that Joseph and his father went through a challenging time, trying to get him reestablished at home. His father remarried, and it was implied that the kids didn't get along with his wife. And you and I have talked about that before. When somebody gets remarried, a parent gets remarried, stepfather, stepmother, that's not an easy gig.
It's not for everybody involved.
Yeah. And it can be tough kind of establishing that relationship, getting it to flourish. Now, once you can get there, a lot of people have great relationships, but sometimes it's really tough to get it to that point.
Some people never get there.
Yeah, some people don't. In 2012, at the age of 16, Joseph became an emancipated minor and moved in with a close friend to finish high school. Okay. You've heard about that a lot of times with child actors.
Yes.
I don't think we hear about it a lot in the stories that we do. So I don't know how often it happens, but it does happen. In 2014, Joseph enrolled at Indiana University, Bloomington. He majored in biochemistry. And I don't know a lot about Indiana University. It's not that far from us.
No, it's what, an hour and a half.
Yeah, other than, they've known for their basketball teams over the years and Bobby Knight.
Bobby Knight. Throwing the chair.
Choking players.
Yeah.
But he won championships.
He did.
Before that.
Their football team's been a little bit better.
Yeah.
Recently.
Yeah, recently. Vivian was happy for her brother. Joseph seemed to flourish in a college environment where, he still had structure, but he could spend time with friends and had more independence. And who doesn't love that college environment? I know my kids are loving it right now because they're flourishing.
Yes.
And they're getting some independence. They're also spending quite a bit of my money. So I'm not loving it as much. No, they're doing great.
Yeah. To go to college, it's always feels good because you're on your own.
Yeah. College was a great time. And I think it is a great time for many kids. Most of us are still supported to some degree.
Yeah.
By your parents, but you've got a lot of independence and, they're not there with you. So you're allowed or able to do some things you wouldn't be able to do.
Exactly.
When you were back at home, like drink a whole bottle of mezcal and, things like that.
Yeah.
I'm not saying,
that was you.
That was me or anything. And eat the worm. Joseph was estranged from his father, but he had contact with Vivian almost every day. And she kept their father updated on what he was doing. So obviously, his relationship with his dad had soured, but his relationship with his sister must have still been really good. He was contacting her. During his second semester of freshman year, Joseph decided to join the Sigma Pi fraternity at IU. His family was surprised by his decision. Vivian said in her interview for the show, Still a Mystery, that she is not a fan of fraternities. Joseph Sr. was also upset because that particular fraternity had a bad reputation on campus at that time. Joseph spent the summer of 2015 living off campus with friends just before the start of his sophomore year. He moved into a house with two fraternity brothers, and he was really excited about this new living situation.
I think you were in a fraternity, weren't you, with some guy named Old Blue?
Blue?
Yeah.
Blue was my boy.
Yeah.
On September 21st, 2015, Vivian received a call from Joseph's former landlord. She co-signed his lease, and the landlord was calling her to inform her that Joseph owed a $680 fee for terminating his lease early. The landlord gave him 1 week to pay the balance. Joseph told Vivian he had checks from one of his summer jobs that he hadn't picked up yet, so he would pay the fee with those. He planned to drop a check off to the landlord on September 28th. On September 27th, 2015, Vivian reminded Joseph that he needed to pay the fee by noon the following day. He reassured her that he had the check on his desk and would drop it off tomorrow. Joseph was last seen alive by his roommates that evening around 11:30 p.m. At 4:15 a.m. on September 28th, Vivian received a strange text from Joseph. It said, per WRTV, "Viv, I love you. I'm leaving the country. By not telling you why, I'm keeping you safe and protected. Please don't try to contact me at this number. It won't work. I'll contact you once I'm set up overseas. Thank you for everything, Viv. I love you, and I'm sorry."
Be a strange text to get anytime during the day, but especially at 4 a.m.
Yeah. I mean, this is, kind of ominous stuff. We get, all of us, how many texts a day? Most of them are benign.
Yeah.
They don't really mean anything. Half of them are unnecessary, or in my case, 90% of them are unnecessary.
Right.
But getting something like this from a loved one, basically saying, I'm leaving the country and I'm keeping you safe by not telling you why.
Exactly.
It's very mysterious, but also a little ominous. Vivian assumed that this was a joke and responded, LOL, shut up. Make sure you pay that apartment.
Yeah, she probably thought, he's just playing a joke on me, saying something stupid.
Well, we said early on, right? He was a prankster, and maybe that played into her thoughts. She explained that she didn't take him seriously because he had a history of doing things that he thought were funny, but were not funny to others. Joseph didn't have a passport, so it wouldn't be possible for him to fly outside the country on such short notice. So either he's messing around, playing around, or could it be that someone else is sending these texts not knowing that he didn't have a passport?
Could have been.
She tried to call him that morning, but all of her calls went to voicemail. She started to worry around noon. When she called Joseph's old apartment complex to ask if he stopped by, they said no. That afternoon, she called the university police and asked them to do a welfare check. The IU Bloomington police did a welfare check and discovered Joseph had not attended classes that day and wasn't at home. All his belongings were in his room, except for his backpack. His check that he was supposed to take to the landlord was still on his desk. Joseph's cell phone was not in his room, which indicated he took it with him when he left. Joseph did leave behind a handwritten note that said, had to leave country. Don't try to contact me via cell. It won't work. We'll contact you once set up overseas. The note was signed Smedley, which was unusual because Joseph never went by his last name.
The whole thing sounds unusual.
Well, it sounds almost verbatim to what he texted his sister.
Yeah.
And, a lot of people, you and I, sometimes, especially on the show, go by our last names or nicknames. Some people go by their last names exclusively.
Right.
Some people never do. It would be strange to see a note signed Smedley when Joseph never would have done that.
Yeah, I mean, if you're leaving a note like that, I'm assuming you're leaving it to your loved ones, your family.
Or friends. Or people you know.
Yeah.
Now, the other thing that was strange was that the note was dated 9/28. His family questioned why he would write this date if he supposedly left on the 27th.
Yeah, maybe he had the wrong date in his head, or maybe the person that actually wrote the note, if it wasn't him,
didn't write it till the 28th.
Yeah.
They definitely did not believe Joseph wrote the note. He had neat handwriting, and the handwriting on the note was messy. Vivian told WTHR, the detective sent me the letter so I can see what it looks like, and it's not his handwriting. She asked the police to do a handwriting analysis, which later came back inconclusive.
Even with them saying that, I'm sure Vivian's like, it's not his handwriting. I know my brother's handwriting.
Vivian was slightly relieved later that afternoon when the police called her and said Joseph was in jail. She was confused because she never thought he would be arrested for anything. She asked several people to call the jail, and they were informed Joseph Smedley was not in custody. The IU police followed up and confirmed there was a mix-up. The man in custody was named Jonathan Smedley.
Wow, it's a mess up. It's unfortunate, but when you're scared about where the heck my brother is, and you're like, oh, well, at least they found him. Now I'll get him out of jail, to find out it's not really even him.
Yeah, so now you're back to being very, very worried.
Sure.
On September 29th, Joseph was officially declared a missing person. It was at that point that Vivian started to think Joseph didn't send the text either, right? She already thought that he didn't write the note. So I think it would be natural, Gibbs, because the note contained the same language that was in the text, If he didn't write the note, well, then he probably didn't send the text.
Exactly.
She went on to Joseph's Instagram and Facebook and looked at his recent tagged posts so she could try to find information on his last movements. She talked to his roommates who said they were at home watching TV and they all went to bed around 11 to 11:30 p.m. on Sunday the 27th. She then hacked into Joseph's GroupMe and learned he was using it to chat with the fraternity brothers in his pledge class. People in the chat told Joseph they were going to tell others. He wasn't actually part of the fraternity because he hadn't paid his dues yet. Vivian went over to the frat house, but she said they were closed off. When she spoke to the president, he referred her back to Joseph's roommates, who were interviewed by police and cooperated with the investigation. So, I want to go back to this group chat and, some of his fraternity brothers saying that they were going to tell people he wasn't actually part of the fraternity because he hadn't paid his dues yet.
Tried to embarrass him.
Yeah. Could that be a catalyst for something? It doesn't seem like that much of a big deal, but when you're that age, it's hard to tell what's going to be a big deal to someone.
But could it also lead to some type of confrontation that
then turned deadly?
Yeah,
it could be. Several days later, the police confirmed Joseph had not withdrawn or deposited any money. There was no evidence he booked a trip anywhere. So if you're going back to the text and letter, I'm traveling overseas, don't try to contact me and all of this, well, the evidence doesn't seem to support that.
No.
There's not much of anything in the way of activity on his bank accounts. They can't find where he's booked a trip, so
it's not lining up.
No, doesn't line up. Investigators tracked his phone signal and discovered his phone pinged at several locations on the day he went missing. The first ping was at 4:15 in downtown Bloomington off 7th and Walnut. About 30 minutes later, there was another ping near Griffey Lake. At 6:30 a.m., there was another ping off State Road 37. This highway runs just north of Griffey Lake. Scent tracking dogs turned up no sign. Joseph was in the area where his cell signal was located. All right, so what do you make of that?
Well, it sounds like his cell phone was in the area, but he wasn't there. So who has his cell phone?
Maybe somebody who did him harm or, something to that effect. The data showed Joseph left the house after his roommates thought he went to bed. And it was said that these three locations, they're not very close. They're not walking distance. And Joseph didn't have a working car at this time. So his family thinks someone might have driven him there. And that's if he was even there physically.
Yeah, I guess if he was in the car, never got out of the car, maybe the dogs wouldn't pick up the scent.
Yeah, that could be. There were rumors Joseph was seen downtown with his frat brothers, but when the family asked the police about it, they said that they weren't aware of anyone who saw him out that night. Vivian also told WTHR that Joseph's phone was turned off sometime on the night of September 27th. Near several popular off-campus hangouts, she said police had searched locations from the text message he sent me at 4 a.m. The location was 7th and Walnut before the phone turned off. So, Gibbs, if you look at the cell phone data that police had, they could track the phone.
Yeah.
And like you said, all you can tell is that the phone was in these locations. It doesn't mean he was there.
No.
For sure. But I want to, talk about the phone being turned off. You have a young man here. How many young people actually turn their phones off? And I would say not many.
I would agree. It's a strange thing to do unless there's a reason behind.
And if so, what would that reason be?
Yeah.
Most kids that age and even younger, they're glued to their phone.
Sure.
They can't keep their face out of their phones for fear that they might miss something.
If their phone turns off, it's not because it was something they did. It was because it probably ran out of charge.
From scrolling Facebook, Instagram, TikTok.
Yeah. Maybe they were on Gibbygram. I don't know.
They could have been. But I do think that the phone being turned off could be a very important clue. I just don't know yet what to make of it. On October 2nd, 2015, a fisherman on Griffey Lake near the Headley Road Bridge found a decomposed male body with binoculars tied around the neck. The Bloomington police confirmed the body found in the lake was an unidentified male, and the coroner confirmed foul play was not suspected. But I will say this, the sources that we went through, they didn't say how tightly the binoculars were tied around the neck. But you'd have to assume, based on the statement that no foul play was suspected, it's pretty safe to say that they had to be somewhat loose, right? They're not thinking that he was strangled with these binoculars. But then you have to ask,
why?
Why's he got binoculars around his neck?
At 4 o'clock or whatever time in the morning.
On October 3rd, 2015, Monroe County Coroner Nicole Meyer confirmed the body found at Griffey Lake was missing IU student Joseph Smedley. His cause of death was consistent with drowning. And once again, no foul play was suspected pending toxicology tests. Joseph's body was found in the lake just east of Old State Road 37, where his phone pinged about 3.5 miles north of downtown Bloomington. Joseph's family told the media that he was a strong swimmer. Right? We talked about it earlier. Growing up, he was a swimmer. He was good at it.
Yeah, I mean,
doesn't mean that strong swimmers can't drown.
Exactly. Especially if, obviously we haven't talked about any toxicology or things like that, but, if you've been drinking, it's harder to swim. There's other reasons,
But you would have to agree, you got a better chance of not drowning.
Absolutely.
If you're a strong swimmer.
Yeah.
As opposed to a person who can't swim at all.
Exactly.
Adding further mystery to the case, IU spokesman Mark Land revealed that Joseph was enrolled but had not been attending classes since the start of the fall semester.
Now that is a big mystery. Why aren't you going to class? What are you doing during the day?
Or what are you doing at night that's not allowing you to get up the next day, or you're sleeping all day, or just what's going on? We don't know. Vivian released a statement through her attorney. It read, "We're heartbroken by this morning's developments and still processing the events of the last 6 days. Joseph was an intelligent and loving son, brother, and friend."
Oh, I'm sure the family was devastated.
Joseph's parents also issued a statement through their spokesperson. It read, "We would like to thank the media and public for their continuing coverage of helping us find our beloved Joseph. It's been a difficult week for our family. After hearing the developments, we ask that you let our family grieve in private so we can begin the healing process. Your thoughts and prayers would be greatly appreciated." So the one thing that I thought was strange here is that, Vivian put out a separate statement.
Yeah, they're not really united.
No, it doesn't seem like it. You would think the family would come together as a unit and release one statement, but that's not how it happened. I mean, even if there was turmoil, even if there was conflict going on, you would think something like this.
Yeah.
Right? Finding out that your son, your brother is dead would bring everybody together. So that did jump out to me.
Makes you wonder what's going on.
Yeah, that she released a completely separate statement through her attorney. On October 10th, 2015, a memorial service was held for Joseph at his old high school. His father, Joseph Sr., told the people gathered per WISH-TV, "We will never know the contribution Joseph was going to make to society. He has a great mind and spirit." And that is the sad thing. You and I talk about it so very often. When a young person is killed or dies, there's always that thought
of,
number one, obviously they died way too young. But number two, what would their life have been? What would they have gone on to do? That has to be tough for the family as well. Because, you're thinking about birthdays. You're thinking about weddings. You're thinking about children.
Holidays.
And there's always something coming up.
Yeah.
That would remind you of them and also what they would be doing right now. I just can't imagine the agony that some of these families go through.
And we know, Joseph had a lot of potential.
Yeah. Yeah, there's no doubt about it, which does kind of deepen the mystery of why he wasn't going to class.
Yeah.
This was not a kid, it seemed like, who was, just about blowing things off. He seemed to be responsible. He seemed to be ambitious. Was there something else going on in his life that was, kind of overriding the whole going to class thing?
And you have to say probably, right? I mean, there's a reason why you're not going to class.
Yeah, there's something. On December 4th, 2015, the completed autopsy was revealed with a shocking cause and manner of death: suicide by drowning. Joseph's autopsy report showed he had THC and alcohol in his system. His body had been weighed down with a backpack full of 66 pounds of rocks.
Oh, that changes things.
Yeah, things got very strange very quickly.
Yes. If you have a backpack on, look, I mean, we've all done, I say we all, I know people have done this when they're training. They'll put a backpack on. They might put 50 pounds, 60 pounds in it.
Yeah.
However they do it, just to
get more resistance.
Exactly.
Right.
But I don't know who's going to do that 4 o'clock, 5 o'clock, whatever time in the morning while you're out drinking. You're going to throw on a backpack with rocks in them?
Well, and I think that is what led them to conclude that this was a suicide by drowning. But when you think about suicide, that seems like a very uncommon way to take your own life.
But you could also say, did somebody place that bag on him?
Yeah. Throw him, incapacitate him, throw him in the water.
Yeah.
Yeah, there's a lot of different avenues to explore around this. But if you're just looking at the information that, let's say, the medical examiner has, all right, he was smoking marijuana, right? He's got THC. He was drinking. Well, let's face it, most kids at college probably have both THC and alcohol in their system at different times of the week.
Yes, that's not out of the ordinary.
No, not for many. But if that's all they have to go on, and he's wearing a backpack full of what is a pretty heavy weight of rocks, I can see why they came to that conclusion. Now, you and I talk about this. Would it be better to not make such a definitive declaration and maybe leave this a little bit undetermined or something like that?
Yeah, I mean, if we can sit here and easily say it could be this or that or this and this, how can you jump to suicide so quickly?
Yeah, I don't know how you can definitively say it. I get it. It looks like that. Vivian told Still a Mystery that the police did not initially tell her this information. According to that episode, different reports refer to the items in the backpack as either bricks or rocks. And I don't know if it matters, but if it's 66 pounds of either,
yeah,
it's a heavy weight.
Sure.
I mean, it's going to help you sink in water, right? That amount of weight. Vivian does not have exact details because the police won't release certain case information to her.
I just think about that weight, and I just, even if, let's say you wanted to do this, once you went under and you started struggling, I think it would be too easy for you to go ahead and
slip the backpack off.
Yeah.
I was thinking that too.
Yeah. Because it's just going to be natural for your body to kick into that mode. And I don't know if many people are strong enough to fight that.
It's going to be a survival instinct.
Yeah.
To shed that backpack and try to swim up, you would think.
Now, if you're thrown in unconscious, You don't know it's on you. And by the time the water hits you, if it even wakes you, at that point, you don't even know what's on your back because you didn't put it there. And you're not going to probably be able to shake it off you because you don't realize it's on you.
Yeah. Yeah. No, I get what you're saying. But do you think it's strange that the police won't release certain information to the family?
Yeah, I think it's strange. Why not?
It's not a murder investigation.
Yeah. If you believe what you say happened, then release the information.
So I thought maybe that was a little strange. Vivian was devastated and confused by the determination. Joseph gave no indication he was depressed or suicidal, and he was making plans for the future. For example, Joseph invited a female friend to hang out with him in early October. Another question she had was where Joseph would find 66 pounds of rocks. There were no large rocks around Griffey Lake. Vivian said she went to the lake and tried to collect 66 pounds of rocks by herself, but she couldn't find enough.
Yeah, so did he find them somewhere else and brought the backpack with him, lugging it around?
Or did somebody else have 66 pounds of rocks and load the backpack? You know, like I said, Bloomington's not that far from us. Most of the lakes around here that I've been to, they don't have a ton of big rocks on the shoreline.
They don't. Kind of just goes grass or field right into
the
lake.
In order for the suicide by drowning theory to work, Joseph would had to have walked 45 minutes from his home, load up a backpack full of rocks at Griffey Lake, and step off a short bridge into the shallow water, which was said to have only been 5 feet deep.
That's another problem.
It is a problem because Joseph was 5'7". He wasn't super tall, but he was tall enough that he could have stood up in the lake.
And again, go to survival instincts. You're probably going to try to stand up. And I don't know if 66 pounds is going to be enough to hold somebody down.
Well, I think it would be if you had some depth to the water and you weren't in a position to just take the backpack off.
Right.
But the fact that you can stand up in the water and you can take the backpack off, like you said, that would take a lot to be able to fight that instinct to survive.
Yeah.
So, I mean, I think you can see here why so many people look at this as being a very mysterious death. Additionally, Joseph's phone was not found with his body. It was found during a second sweep of the area. And this has led to the question, did the phone enter the water at a different time than Joseph?
Well, and if so, how and why?
Well, you know, was it that somebody realized that, his phone needed to be with the body, so they went back and threw it in?
Tossed it in.
In early 2016, Vivian hired a forensic pathologist and filed a formal complaint alleging the police were hindering the private investigation by not releasing case information. She had a second autopsy done, and the new report was sent to the forensic pathologist she hired, who found the discrepancy from the first autopsy. There were 2 deep intramuscular hematomas, or bruises, on Joseph's back. The pathologist could not complete the report because the Bloomington PD refused to send photos of the original scene. However, the pathologist did tell the family he was leaning towards accidental or undetermined for the manner of death and not suicide.
Well, those bruises on his back, it could have been a few things, right? He could have been hit hard by some type of object. Could have been the backpack with all the rocks on it when he hit the
bottom of the lake.
Yeah. But if you're not going to show us the photo of the crime scene so we could determine what that surface looked like, we can't match that up to the bruises.
The Bloomington PD issued a press statement about the death investigation, which was published by the Herald Times. It read, on December 3rd, 2015, the Bloomington Police Department and the Monroe County Coroner shared the findings of the investigation with Joseph Smedley's father, who was determined to be the appropriate next of kin and established point of contact for the immediate family. BPD made the commitment to keep working with Joseph's father in an effort to answer additional questions they might have regarding the circumstances surrounding his death. That commitment has, in fact, continued with the most recent contact having occurred on January 11th, 2016. The Monroe County coroner has ruled the death of Joseph Smedley to be a suicide by drowning. Rulings of cause and manner of death are the responsibility of coroners and not that of law enforcement. While those conclusions can be determined through joint investigations between law enforcement and the coroner, the Bloomington Police Department has not been asked to provide any further investigative assistance at this time. Okay, I know that was a lot, but I wanted to read that in its entirety. So there's two things that jump out at me. One is that, they are saying that they were working with Joseph's father.
Right.
But we talked about Vivian.
Sure we have.
Hiring a forensic pathology, asking for a second autopsy. So again, is there still a disconnect between her and her dad?
It kind of sounds like that.
It does sound like that.
And a disconnect between the police department and Vivian.
But are they giving the information to her dad and those two aren't communicating? I don't know. It didn't say that, but you can kind of draw that inference.
Yeah. And I think that's what they wanted.
It may be correct. It may not be correct.
I think that's what the police was trying to say. They're talking to Joseph's dad. And if the dad is not relaying the information on to Vivian, that's not on them. They have one point of contact, and that's what they're utilizing.
And then the second thing that I thought was important was that they were saying, hey, it's not our responsibility. It's up to the coroner, right, to determine cause and manner of death, which is correct. But they came out and added that they had not been asked to provide any further investigative assistance at this time, which tells me the coroner didn't need or want any clarification.
That they felt confident with their
ruling. It's not like they were going back and forth and wanted further information from the police. In October 2016, supporters gathered at IU's Neil Marshall Black Culture Center Library to show that Joseph had not been forgotten. Vivian expressed her frustration that she was still not able to access documents from the coroner's office to finish her private investigation. She told the Herald Times, "I'm doing this because Joseph deserves better. Joseph deserves justice." And you feel for the family, but I really feel for Vivian here. It sounds like she is trying so hard to get to the bottom of this because she loves her brother.
Yeah, no doubt they were super close.
And she's having a hard time doing that.
Yeah.
In June 2020, Joseph's family launched an online petition seeking a new death investigation. Joseph's father spoke to WTHR asking, "Does it make sense to you that somebody that supposedly wants to commit suicide would roam around in the woods in the dark, put a backpack on, pick up rocks to weigh themselves down, and then jump off into a lake that has an average depth of 3 feet?"
I think he said it perfectly.
And the answer is no.
Exactly.
That does not make sense to me. Now, does that mean it couldn't have happened? No, I don't think it means that. It just doesn't seem likely.
Yeah, the logic is not there.
No. As we talk about that plausibility meter, where does it rate? And for me, it rates very low on my plausibility meter.
Yeah.
If there was somebody, let's say Joseph Smedley, who was intent on taking their own life, walking around in the dark, trying to find rocks to fill up your backpack to jump into a lake that is 3 to 5 feet deep, it just doesn't sound like sound thinking whatsoever.
No.
Now, maybe he's not thinking soundly.
But you know what it does sound like to me is if somebody wanted to hide a body, 3 to 5 feet. If you put a backpack on with 60 plus pounds in it, would do the job.
Yeah, I don't know if it would hide the body forever because, let's face it, you could probably see the body depending on
location,
the clarity of the lake and all of that. But if you wanted people to think it was a suicide,
yeah,
maybe that's a way to do it. Vivian told the outlet, every specialist I've reached out to said the same thing. They don't understand why it's a suicide. And I think you and I are struggling with that. I think a lot of people listening are going to struggle with that determination. Why suicide versus undetermined? Because there does seem to be some uncertainty here.
There does.
In making that ruling suicide by drowning, there's a lot of finality there. There doesn't seem to be a lot of finality in this case. There seems to be a lot of uncertainty. So to me, undetermined seems to make much more sense. Vivian added the last people who he was with was his fraternity brother. So I definitely believe that they know something. She said later in the interview, it could have potentially been accidental. It could have been anything. It's the fact that the police department is not willing to look into that. But again, as we talk about, why would the police not look into it?
If the medical examiner says it's suicide, they have nothing to look into.
There's no crime.
There's no crime.
Right?
Exactly.
To investigate.
Yep.
And this comes up in many, many cases. Now, if it was undetermined, maybe there would be an investigation. And I think that's why, these rulings are so important. Over 80,000 people signed the petition by July 2020. Joseph's case received renewed attention amid protests over the deaths of Black Americans. Some speculated that Joseph's case was another investigation that was quickly swept under the rug. Vivian told WRTV Joseph was treated like a suicide the moment he was pulled out of the water. She accused the police of hindering the private investigation by not releasing case information to her private pathologist, saying, "We've not filed an affidavit due to the fact that BPD refuses to cooperate with our forensic pathologist, Dr. Thomas Sozio, who was hired to complete a second autopsy. Dr. Sozio said he's reached out to them multiple times, and they will not provide the information needed to complete his report."
And I don't know why that would be.
I don't either. She mentioned that the FBI had taken a look into the case and did not rule out homicide. She wants them to be involved again due to BPD's lack of cooperation and poor procedures.
There's typically a reason why you don't want to cooperate, right? Either something wasn't handled correctly.
And you don't want that to come to light.
Yeah. Or procedurally, it's just not something you feel like you need to do. But wouldn't you relay that to who's ever asking?
I mean, you understand when there's an open investigation, right? The police can only give out so much information.
Right.
There's no open investigation here.
It's not a criminal investigation at all.
So is there a reason why they have to hold certain things back? I don't know. Maybe there is, and I'm just not aware of it. But maybe it's more along the lines of what you were saying. But then when you think about the FBI, okay, they looked into the case. But how involved could the FBI get? I mean, it doesn't really fall under their purview unless it was either a kidnapping or they thought maybe it was a hate crime. Yeah. Then I think it would warrant FBI involvement.
Yeah, it would open the door for them.
But I think, they have a mandate, right, of certain things that they get involved in. Or if they're asked to take a look, they can. Vivian noted there is more circumstantial evidence that suggests he did not commit suicide than that he did. He was making plans the night he disappeared, and the timeline does not add up. According to Still a Mystery, in April 2021, Indiana University suspended Sigma Pi, Joseph's former fraternity, for 2 years due to hazing and violating COVID regulations. And, let's go back to this fraternity because I think, Gibbs, as we wrap up this case, One thing you have to look at is hazing.
Sure you do. It's a big thing.
It's been a big part of fraternities for many years. A lot of them have tried to phase it out. They've gotten in trouble on many campuses for hazing, but let's not be naive and think it still doesn't go on. Could you see some type of hazing here that went horribly wrong?
Sure.
And a cover up ensued.
Absolutely.
If you're looking at all possible angles to this case, which I think you have to do, is suicide one of them? Yeah, obviously it is. But to me, it is not so clear cut that this was a suicide. And I think you have to look at the other possibilities as well. And that could be one. People are drinking. There's hazing going on as he's trying to get into this fraternity or whatever it is. And he ends up dead. And instead of placing the call to the police, people decide they don't want to get in trouble and they cover it up and try to make it look like something else.
I mean, when you look at the text message, the note, based on what Vivian said, it doesn't sound like how her brother would talk. Doesn't make any sense.
She said it wasn't his handwriting.
Yeah. And again, it was also signed, not Joseph, but by Smedley, which is not typical for him to sign something like that.
No, but maybe is that something that his fraternity brothers or some of his brothers called him?
Yeah, maybe that's all they really knew him by. Hey, Smedley's there,
I don't know. I'm not saying that's what happened, but
you have to look at all angles.
Yeah, I am saying that it is something that has to be at least a possibility.
And I think that's all the family wants,
is for that investigation to occur.
Yeah.
And to really kind of dig into it a little deeper. Because I do think the suicide by drowning was made pretty quickly.
Yeah.
And I get it. On the surface, it could look like that.
Good.
But like you and I, could someone not sit there and think, oh, this doesn't seem to make sense. Maybe it could be something else. Maybe we should mark it undetermined while we have the police do a little more investigation. What does that hurt?
Could I, back in the day, and my buddies marched you around that area in the woods with a backpack that had 66 pounds of rocks in it as an initiation and had you do all this weird stuff, chug beers while you're doing it,
sure,
take a hit off the joint, and then walk you over to the water and then, push you down, make you fall backwards. And we didn't know when you did that, something bad happened.
Yeah.
Right. And now we're like, oh shit, he's not getting up.
Or maybe it didn't even happen by the water.
No, it could happen somewhere else.
Could have happened somewhere else. And that's where they decided to take the body. Again, I'm not laying this on the fraternity brothers, but
just a lot of speculation.
When you're speculating about these unsolved cases, I think you have to look at a lot of different things.
Yeah.
The Justice for Joseph petition is still active on change.org and it has over 124,000 signatures. So that's a lot.
It is.
And there's a lot of people, I think, that, think this case is mysterious, still needs to be looked into. Not all the facts have come out. And there's probably why they're signing the petition. But as of 2025, at least at the time that we're recording this episode, Joseph's cause and manner of death are still suicide by drowning, and the case has not been reopened.
Yeah, well,
and I don't think it will be reopened as long as the cause and manner of death remain suicide by drowning.
I agree with you. Until they change that, which will allow the police to then investigate, it's going to remain the way it is.
Yeah. It's not the first case that we've seen that's kind of gone along that similar path. A fairly quick suicide determination, which essentially kind of shuts down most of, if not all, police involvement / investigation.
Sure.
And they got other cases to work on.
Oh, absolutely.
So there's no rush or really any impetus to do anything on the Joseph Smedley case because
it's not a case.
It's not a case to them. It's frustrating, though. It's frustrating for us. Imagine the family.
Oh, of course. Yeah. Being the dad, the mom, the sister, brother.
Yeah.
Absolutely. It would drive you crazy.
So I feel bad for them, not only, for the grief, the loss, but also what must be a very helpless feeling. Wanting to get something done, but not being able to make it happen because, there's a bureaucracy involved that sometimes you just can't get past. But that's it for our episode on the mysterious death of Joseph Smedley. And I do think it is a very mysterious death.
Definitely some unanswered questions
that deserves a little more looking into. And I hope they do at some point.
Yeah.
We got some voicemails, Gibbs. You want to check those out?
Let's hear them.
Well, I'm sitting in traffic, like we're going like 1/2 of a mile an hour. Anyway, listen to the story about the 3 girls. And Gibby, he just gave away the movie Castaway, and I haven't seen it yet. So now I don't want to watch it because Helen Hunt doesn't wait for Tom Hanks. There's her Dennis, or he's Dennis. Thanks a lot, Gibby.
It's only been out there for 20 years.
She never fails to crack me up, though. I'll tell you that. First of all, I don't think I've ever gone 1/2 mile an hour. I don't know how you measure that.
I don't either.
I don't think my car goes in 1/2 miles an hour.
No.
But I agree with you. It's different if the movie just came out. But if you haven't seen Castaway by now, that's on you.
Yes.
And Helen Hunt does not wait for Tom Hanks.
She doesn't. It's so wrong.
As sad as it is.
Yeah. Gets married and has some kids.
Ashley from Batavia. I was listening to the Joanne Romaine where she disappeared from her church and the police's investigation was horrendous and faulty and all that. But I was listening to the part where she lost contact or was on bad terms with some of her siblings because of the inheritance and stuff. And I have an uncle that we do not speak to because after my maternal grandparents passed, he flipped a switch real quick and tried to accuse my mother of manipulating them and taking what she could and whatever, even though the will was strictly stated as everything was going to be split 100% even except for the house, because when my maternal grandmother was diagnosed with Alzheimer's, we moved in and we started doing renovations and we were, living there full time to take care of her and my grandfather because he had 2 strokes, so he wasn't mobile very well. But just to keep lawyer prices and stuff, not having to deal with all that, we essentially gave up the entire inheritance other than, I think, the sale of her car, my grandma's car. But yeah, death can ruin a lot of families. It's a little sad what changes people. Keep your own time ticking.
Yeah, greed can do that.
Yeah, money, greed can change people. We also know it's a motive for murder because it comes up time and time again on TCAT. But it is sad because you have families that are ruined, split over what? Some money?
Focusing on the wrong thing at that time, right?
Absolutely.
You just lost a loved one. Focus in on that.
Yeah, I hate to hear that.
Yeah, I do too.
But that's it, Gibbs, for another episode of True Crime All the Time Unsolved. So for Mike
and Gibby,
stay safe and keep your own time ticking.